Hey everyone, welcome to the YOUnify podcast. YOUnify is a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping you cut through all the negativity, all the noise, and find easy ways to help yourself and the people around you flourish and thrive. My name is Brandyn Keating. I'm the CEO and co-founder of YOUnify and the co-host of this podcast. I couldn't be more excited to have Katy Granville-Chapman on with us today. Katy is one of the co-authors of the new book, Leadership for Flourishing, co-editors, I should say. And Katy, thanks so much for being here and joining us from the UK. How are you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much, Brandyn. Such a gift to be with you. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it's just been amazing getting to work with you over the years on Leadership for Flourishing. So thank you so much.
Of course. Fantastic. So if y'all saw our very first episode, you got a little bit of an appetizer of Katy, and we're really excited to be able to do a deeper dive today. So not only is Katy one of the co-editors of Leadership for Flourishing, she is also a leader for flourishing herself, helping to cultivate young leaders in the world and helping organize experts in the field who are also helping others flourish and thrive. So Katy, could you just let folks know what some of the roles that you're playing in the world, a few of your many titles, and how you're situated professionally?
Oh, thank you so much. So my full-time job, I help teachers to hopefully flourish. So I look after their performance and development and look after leadership education as well. And then really lucky because I get to co-chair a group called Leadership for Flourishing, which is part of the Flourishing Network hosted by the Human Flourishing Program at Harvard. So that's a real gift. And then have done some work with the Oxford Character Project and the Department of Education at the University of Oxford as well. So both at Oxford University, which has been amazing. And something else really excited to talk about maybe later, Global Social Leaders, which I was fortunate enough to co-found with John Harper.
Amazing. So last time you joined us, Katy, you shared a little bit of a surprise fact about yourself, which was that in your past, you were actually a pretty serious synchronized swimmer. And no sooner did you tell me that than one of my friends sent me a note saying that there's a community class for mature people to do synchronized swimming. So I may be asking you for some synchronized swimming tips soon. We'll see. There may be some sequence in my future.
Amazing. Do it.
Yeah. But I wonder, now that you shared that surprising fact with me, I'm wondering what other surprises about Katy there are. Can you think of another thing that others might be surprised to know about you?
I think maybe if they didn't know me, they might be surprised that I was in the British Army because I probably don't present in a particularly steely way or scrappy way.
Yes, and speaking about your career as a leader in the British Army, last time you went on the podcast, you mentioned that you really were inspired to go on this whole journey of investigating leadership for flourishing through your experience in the Army. And personally, myself, I found that a little bit surprising. I think we have a lot of images, maybe from what we see in the movies or just what stereotypes we might have in our mind about the sort of gruff, emotionless sergeants that sort of beat you into compliance. It seems a little bit of a distance from flourishing and love. So I'd love to hear in more depth about what you observed and how you saw leadership for flourishing blossoming in the Army. And also maybe before you get into that, if you could define for folks who didn't see the podcast last time, what actually leadership for flourishing means.
Oh, thank you, Brandyn. So Leadership for Flourishing puts flourishing as the absolute priority of a leader, both of people and the planet. And what's amazing about that is that there's no need to give up any performance either. So yeah, putting flourishing, the well-being, ensuring that the people that you lead are fulfilled, they're experiencing positive emotions, they're growing, but also that you're leading in a way that's not extractive to the planet, but it's actually sustainable. In terms of the army, so I went to the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst for a year to train to become an officer. And this was really transformational. And the motto is serve to lead. And this really unlocked so much. It was totally extraordinary to see how many people within the British Army really genuinely do serve to lead. So they really do put others first and really take care of the people to the left of them and to the right of them, and especially if they're privileged enough to lead them. And what's really remarkable is even in the most challenging of environments like Iraq, you would still see people serving to lead and really putting their brother and sister soldiers' needs above their own. And it genuinely led to flourishing. It was totally extraordinary that people were happy and they were positive, they were fulfilled, they were committed, and they were looking after each other in these in really, really difficult circumstances. So I started to get super interested in the idea of leadership, not just the leader being the person who has a formal role affecting the leadership of everything, but also, that there's leadership in all of us. And when we choose to put another person's flourishing first, then that would be an act of leadership.
So, do I understand correctly that you saw not only the people who were in official leadership positions, maybe titles higher up in the hierarchy, exhibiting leadership for flourishing, but also in sort of a peer-to-peer way that affected the overall culture? Is that correct?
Yeah, 100%. So there's one extraordinary story from a place that I did get to briefly kind of visit and serve in called Al-Amara. It was quite close to Basra in southern Iraq, where the British forces were. And there was a 19-year-old combat medic, and she went out on an operation, and it was all going fine through most of the night. And then it got towards dawn, so it was getting kind of lightish. And the vehicle that she was in needed to go to another British Army vehicle called a Warrior that had got stuck in a ditch.
Mm-hmm.
But as they got closer and closer, they started to get more and more incoming fire, and you could kind of hear things pinging and dinging off their vehicle. And eventually, the turret got hit, and that meant that the commander, who was a sergeant, he ended up getting hit.
Oh my goodness!
And the only way that she could get to him as the medic, bearing in mind that she's the lowest rank in the British Army. She's 19 and female as well, which is great. So she had to get out of the back of the vehicle and climb all the way onto the top of it so that she could reach down into the commander's hatch and administer first aid to her vehicle commander, the sergeant. And the sniper that had actually shot the sergeant saw her emerge from the vehicle as well and started to shoot at her. But there was also kind of rocket attacks going around her. I mean, totally extraordinary act of courage and bravery and selflessness. And the thing is, if you've got the confidence that the person to the left and right of you is going to do that for you, then that's extraordinary for your flourishing. Like sometimes in work, we don't even want to give credit when someone else has done something. And we quite like to take the credit for ourselves. Whereas in the army, you've got this extraordinary level of generosity. And I would totally define that as an act of love. So I think that it's, I think that I was very, very privileged to see and learn about and hear a lot of that kind of behavior. And I think it was so profound for flourishing.
What an incredible story. My goodness. And what an incredible experience. And I'm glad you came back unscathed from that. Wow.
Yeah, I was not frontline, but as you can imagine.
Well, extraordinary nonetheless. My goodness. And, Katy, you mentioned that, it can be very tempting. And, I think people see a lot of leaders now who maybe aren't exhibiting that kind of selflessness or that kind of love, who are more on the side of the take the credit for myself, or worse, even doing things that are damaging or harming their organizations, or the broader world. I certainly hear a lot of that frustration, both from my friends and in my professional life, about, how some of our leaders in business and politics and other sectors aren't really exhibiting the kind of character that we might like to see. And I love this idea that you're sharing about, well, yeah, there's a hierarchy, and people who are in an official position of leadership can kind of lead out with leadership for flourishing, and there's a role for peers. And just to take that a step further, if I'm just overwhelmed by all that's going on in the world where leaders aren't living up maybe to those standards of character, and I don't know where to begin in my daily life on how to make a difference for that, maybe it just seems like it's all too big and it's all too much. Do you have any thoughts on how an average everyday person could find a place to begin?
Oh, yeah, literally any act of kindness, it doesn't matter how small it is going to have such a ripple effect, which is so encouraging. Because if you, Brandon, do something kind for me, then the probability is I'm going to do something kind for someone else, or at least I'm much more likely to be kind to the next few people that I meet. And so the ripple effect is really, really powerful. And I think we often underestimate how much impact we actually do have. And as leaders, that then gets amplified, because the higher up the hierarchy you get promoted, the more attention people actually pay to you. And obviously you have more responsibility with your decision making. So yeah, I think don't underestimate how much influence you actually have. It can be a bit scary, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and the ability to shift culture just right where you live and make a difference right where you are. Amazing. And so, Katy, how did you make the transition? It seems like, from being out in the Army observing incidents like the one you just described to, sort of the halls of academia and founding global social leaders. How did you make that transition from the Army into research and academia?
I was really lucky, actually, because mostly my job in the Army was education and training. So that was amazing. And then I got married, and yeah, we thought probably best that we're not both in the Army, because my husband was a surgeon in the Army at the time. So I was like,
Wow.
oh, I really, really love teaching. I'll try and get into teaching. And I was really lucky to go to Wellington College, and I was recruited by Sir Anthony Seldon, and he very generously said, set up a leadership institute. And being Anthony, he said, just make sure it's the best in the world. So if anyone knows Sir Anthony Seldon, that's kind of usual.
No pressure, no pressure. Yeah.
No pressure at all. But it was really interesting, actually. He's a really extraordinary guy. And I suppose when he said that to me, the message I received was, A, this is totally terrifying. There's no way in a million years I can possibly do this. But B, you believe that I can. And that's really good. So I think that was a really great example of leadership. And he does that all the time, even now. And it's really great for helping you grow and want to be better. But having been set that challenge, I was like, I've got to try and create valuable, but I have no qualifications whatsoever in this. How can I do something impactful if I haven't studied it properly? And I'd been lucky to work with loads and loads and loads of soldiers, mostly through training them, and hear all these stories and understand kind of what it takes. But I wanted to get some kind of credibility around it. So I did a master's and then a PhD, and I was very, very lucky to get into Oxford to do that. I met some extraordinary people there, and connected with the Department of Education there and the Oxford Character Project, as well as the Wellbeing Research Centre, and was really, really inspired. And then eventually got connected to the Human Flourishing Programme at Harvard as well. And so that really, really helped with the academic side, kind of meeting the right people to collaborate with, working out what's kind of valid, reliable, and what isn't. So that was basically, it was because I'd been set a challenge that I felt completely unqualified for. So I thought I'd better get some learning under my belt double quick.
Amazing. Well, and I think there's a great lesson for all of us there, right? I mean, you, I think we all can get a little bit paralyzed when a big challenge comes before us. And it sounds like having that person believe in you, think that actually, well, you can do this. I trust you to do this. I'm putting this in your hands. It sounds like helped you move forward, even though it might have been a little bit overwhelming. Were there other things that sort of helped you take the first step and the second step, ultimately leading you to some incredible global work?
Oh, that's so generous. Definitely other people. So meeting John Harper, my co-founder for Global Social Leaders, has been really profound as well. So he came from a social action background. So he was essentially training university students to set up social action projects. And then did it independently for an amazing company called Future Foundations latterly when I met him. But he really believed in the power of social action for transforming communities, but also as the most effective way to train leaders. I was like, oh, I'm totally on the same page with you there. And so, we were super lucky to co-found Global Social Leaders, having done a couple of British government programs together around youth social action, and then wanting to do something independent and global, because we felt if we just limit it to Britain, then the young people don't get that global perspective, which is also so powerful for flourishing.
Yes. Well, and I love this idea that as you sought to create this leadership program, you weren't just thinking about how can we teach concepts, but how can we bring action and bring positive change into the world. And so tell us a little bit more about Global Social Leaders. Can you give folks a little bit of an orientation into what it is and, and maybe any fun anecdotes from the early days?
Oh, thank you. So initially we used to ask people to come, so young people from about the age of 7 to 17 to fly over to Britain. And then we did a 2-week program with them at Wellington, our school, and do lots of leadership experiences, take them to different places, and then ask them to go back to their communities and set up a global social action project that they work on for that year. And then we give them kind of remote support throughout that year. But then COVID struck. And so we ended up putting a lot of it online. But the projects that the young people do, even without the 2-week training, we did some shorter ones. We did them kind of in Mozambique, in the Middle East, in China, in different places, just to test that. So just 3 days. But even without any of that, even with just a couple of kind of webinars and Student Connect and Teacher Connect sessions, these young people are creating the most extraordinary projects. It would totally blow your mind. There was a team in India, and they were really worried about the water pollution in the mangroves locally to them. And so they decided that they were going to code a drone that would be able to detect high levels of microplastic in the water. Literally. So then they created a net that would attract the microplastic and be able to extract it. And they ended up getting funding from MIT and the Indian government. It was totally like blow your mind. These
extraordinary,
yeah. And then like this 9-year-old came on a call the other day, and she was worried about water waste because she reckoned that the water companies locally to her weren't maintaining their pipes. And so she coded a probe that could test for water moisture and detect where the cracks were, and therefore where the leaks were, and where they should prioritize fixing it, and then lobbied the companies. You're like, oh my goodness, this is so cool. And there are literally, we've got projects from 105 different countries. There are thousands of these projects, these examples where these young people have just got themselves together, got themselves organized, and made a real genuine difference in their community. And even young people with additional needs are doing extraordinary things. So that's really exciting too. It feels like anyone can just take a little bit of action with a few friends and make a real difference.
Yeah, these ideas are extraordinary. So is it correct that all the ideas are coming from the young people themselves?
Yeah. And they are supported. It does work better when they're supported by an enthusiastic teacher, for sure, because often there is bureaucracy and red tape and complexities around policy that a teacher can kind of help them navigate through. But really, we encourage the teachers to coach them and get them to come up with their own project ideas. And I think most of the inspiration now comes from other projects because we've got a big project library just held online, totally open access. And so they can say, oh, I'm really interested in reducing hunger in my local area. So they'll click on the UN SDG Zero Hunger, and there'll be a list of projects that tackled hunger. And we're like, this is the time to plagiarize, guys. There's no cheating. Please copy others and just make it work for your situation. So yeah, it's a bit of a different message, but they are drawing a lot of inspiration and encouragement because they're like, oh, well, if this 9-year-old group of children, kind of these 9-year-olds are doing this, then surely as a 14-year-old, I can do this no problem. Or yeah, it's quite cool.
Yeah, amazing. You know, that sense of possibility that young people have and sort of that unfettered imagination, I feel like we can all borrow a little bit from. And I love the idea that you're also modeling with young people what is possible for other young people to give them that information and expand their, you know, sort of horizon of what is in the realm of the possible. Amazing. So as you're thinking about leadership, oh, I'm sorry, I should mention that, again, with the book Leadership for Flourishing, Katy's chapter on global social leaders gives you more details about the program that she was just talking about. And you can read some really wonderful stories in there as well about these inspiring young people who are such amazing leaders in their own right. And I'm curious, Katy, you know, in the book, there are 34 different people who have contributed, 34 different experts from across multiple disciplines, folks who are researchers, folks who are out in the world practicing leadership. And of course, the common thread is that they're practicing leadership for flourishing. On the flip side of that coin, what do you think is the most common misconception that people have about leadership, or maybe what makes a good leader that might get in the way of flourishing leadership?
Oh, thank you. It's such a good question. So I really think that people think still that, you know, the big characters, the ones who've got kind of command presence and really can dominate a room and be super charismatic, they're the ones that can get things done and can make transformational change. And there's so much evidence that that's just not the case, especially not for leadership for flourishing. It's really the loving, compassionate leaders who really make the biggest difference. And actually, they get much better results. But we're still promoting narcissists, psychopaths. Psychopaths are so overrepresented in CEOs. Like, about 5% of CEOs are definitively psychopathic. And in the global population, it's meant to be about 1%. So you're like, what are we doing? This is insane. And the same with narcissism, again, very overrepresented in senior leadership. And I so desperately want that to change. We've got to be promoting the good guys and the good girls.
That's so fascinating, Katy. I actually didn't know that as a statistical matter, narcissists are overrepresented among CEOs. And that's something we can change, right? With changing our value set. So going towards a focus on the leaders we want to cultivate, your book with the amazing Emmy Bidston, Leader, Know, Love, and Inspire Your People, was longlisted for a Management Book Award. And in plain terms, if someone asked you, what does a great leader actually do every day? Like as a practical matter, what does it look like when they're walking through their day? How could you address that or make that more concrete for folks?
So we decided, oh my gosh, Emmy was so incredible to work with and still is. I'm so lucky to get to work with a best friend all the time. So good. But we both are quite simplistic and we're like, we really can't hold more than 3 ideas in our head at one time. So we've got to boil this down. We've got to take all this complex, extraordinary, brilliant, rigorous research and we've got to make it simple because we just can't hold any more than 3 things in our heads. So we decided really what we were seeing was that the number one thing that leaders must do is get to know their people and listen to them, understand their values, know what gets them out of bed in the morning, know where they're strong, know where their struggles are, and really know them. And then if you know them really, really well, then you can do the second thing, which is to love them. But I think it's really hard to love people if you don't know them, because I think you can get it very wrong if you don't really understand them, and you can kind of put support in where it's really unwelcome and they really want autonomy and growth, or you can kind of ignore them when actually they're desperate for a bit more scaffolding or support or whatever. So I think know your people, love your people. And if you do those 2 things, then you have got the possibility of inspiring them and really connecting to what matters to them, connecting to a really bigger purpose where you're all making a difference in the world together. But I think you need to know them and love them before you can think about inspiration. And certainly burning platforms work for a couple of months to inspire people, but they definitely don't work for the long term. So know your people, love your people, and then you can inspire them by connecting to a bigger purpose.
So it sounds like not so much of a one size fits all, but more of an honoring the individuality of each person.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, if you're the CEO of a massive organization, then you're only going to be able to know well the group kind of directly who are reporting to you. But then the hope is if you do that really, really well, then they can look after the next layer exceptionally well and so on. And so it trickles right the way down the culture. And then hopefully if everyone's being kind of educated in this on the kind of front line of the culture, wherever that is, or the company, then hopefully it will go up through the company as well. That's the hope.
So it sounds like there's kind of a virtuous cycle if the leadership is modeling that we know and love and inspire our direct reports, and that trickles down through the company, then it can also trickle back up as it continues to sort of be implemented on the front lines. Is that right?
Beautifully put. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Of course. And just want to let folks know who are watching or listening, if you're thinking about, how can I get involved in helping my own community flourish a little bit more? How can I, sort of promote some of these ideas coming into the world in a way that's easy and accessible to me? We want to let you know that there are a few simple things that you can do literally starting right now. The first thing is that we want to be able to get the tips and resources that we're talking about on this podcast and in the book out to more people. So you'll see a link below to buy the book if you're so inclined, which we really do rely on those book sales to get the book out in front of more eyeballs. So if you're in a position to do that, that in and of itself is a huge help. Or send the link to somebody else who might be interested. We also really appreciate, because it does help so much to give more people access to this information, if you are able to click that subscribe button if you're watching or listening on YouTube. Again, that's totally free, but that really does help us as well. And also clicking that like button. And we really would appreciate your comments and questions as we seek to bring more content to you that helps you flourish and thrive. So all those things can help a lot. And we're also starting a campaign called Write the Future, where you can actually get together with people right in your local community in order to start to envision together what it looks like to write the hopeful future in easy, accessible ways. And we have some super easy toolkits for teachers, for people in the workplace, for people in community, at festivals. If you're interested in that, we'll have an email address below, which is writethefuture@younify.org, in order to get involved that way. So Katy, you have worked internationally throughout 105 countries with global social leaders, and engaged people all over the world as well through the Harvard Oxford co-hosted Leadership for Flourishing Community of Practice that you have been leading. Have you noticed leadership or flourishing showing up differently in different cultures, or are there universal principles across cultures, or maybe a little of each?
Oh, both and definitely. I think we looked at it in quite a lot of depth when we were creating our free of charge online course called Leading with Character. And we were really lucky because we had a genuinely global group. So we had Luna from China, Lena from Afghanistan, Adiyinka from Nigeria, Gerald from Kenya, and Anjali from Bangladesh, and Veronica from Mexico. So it was a really global group, and it was really interesting because the Adiyinka was obviously really expert on Afro-communitarianism, and it was really interesting the importance of the idea that I am because we are as a community, and the fact that you can't flourish as an individual, it's got to be community flourishing, which we're seeing absolutely should be the case globally. And that's how flourishing needs to be understood. I can't possibly flourish if you're not flourishing, Brandyn, and so on. So I think that was really powerful to see that that was really explicit and understood in another culture. Luna was amazing on metaphors, like super interesting. So I loved her idea of a lotus and for flourishing as a metaphor for flourishing, because the lotus flower can still bloom and flourish even in really, really polluted water. And so it was the idea that we can overcome our circumstances and still flourish,
Beautiful.
even if things are really difficult. So that was very cool as well. Lena from Afghanistan found the way we were using love didn't work for her culture and that she had come from. And so it was how we could make it more about talking about contributory love and unitary love, so that we were seeing it more as a contribution rather than a feeling, which again is so important for flourishing and totally relevant. But it was really great to have someone from a different culture question how we were explaining it so that we were able to be more precise and say, yeah, this is about the contribution. It's the desire for another person's flourishing and well-being and action to bring that into manifestation. So that was really helpful as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love those ideas of interdependence, and just the different perspectives. Beautiful. And so if you could go back to your younger self, perhaps at the start of the Army or starting the global social leaders movement, or maybe even younger, maybe back to those synchronized swimming days, what would you tell your younger self about leadership, flourishing, character? Is there anything you wish that you knew sooner or had learned sooner, or that you would advise younger Katy?
Oh, definitely. I think actually going back to my childhood, winning doesn't matter. Like, it really, really doesn't make you happy. It's really interesting. Another person in our group that you know called Kath Bishop, who got a silver medal at the Olympics. She writes a lot about a different way to succeed in sport. And she interviewed Johnny Wilkinson, who's one of our most famous rugby players. And he actually kicked the winning kick at the World Cup, which is a huge deal. And he said that happiness just didn't come. And if you look at the neuroscience, you just hedonically adapt. It's just a treadmill. And so you never feel happy through winning. You're only going to feel happy through working together on something meaningful with your friends and working on your friendships and your relationships. So I wish I'd known that sooner, because I was doing the most insane amounts of training. And what I really should have been doing is what these global social leaders are doing, and actually, with my friends, contributing to our community and trying to make the world better. That would have made me much happier. But it was very good for discipline. I met some amazing people. I'm deeply, deeply grateful to my parents, especially my mother, for all those 0, 4, 45 starts.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think so many of us realize later in life that winning is not the end all be all. Now you mentioned neuroscience, and your current research is actually focusing on the teenage brain, perhaps a slightly terrifying place. What are you learning about the teenage brain?
Oh my gosh, so much. It's been such an interesting journey. And actually, the teenage brain is just a more extreme version of ours, I guess, in terms of, because there's so much rewiring going on. There's so much change happening. But really, the fundamentals are the same for an adult brain as well. And what helps keep a teenage brain flourishing and healthy is also really good for an adult brain and a child brain. So it just perhaps matters even more for teenagers, because there's so much change and rewiring going on for them. So I guess probably actually one of the main things I learned about was this idea of the reward paradox. So our brain's reward system and what we kind of crave and desire. So things like success, but also things like chocolate, likes on social media, kind of following our algorithm, that kind of thing. It just doesn't make us happy, because yes, it releases dopamine and 7 other chemicals as well. It's hyper complex, but dopamine's kind of the one that has the biggest effect. But kind of at the same time, our stress system gets activated as well. So with cortico factor releasing hormone as well. So that's kind of, it's, I'm not explaining this very well. I'm so sorry. You might need to cut this out. But essentially what happens is our stress system gets activated at the same time. So corticotropin releasing hormone gets released, and that then triggers the HPA axis. And that just makes us feel kind of agitated and a bit frustrated and kind of the need to have more of whatever we were doing before. And then our dopamine receptors, they get damped down, so they become less sensitive. And so what gave us the kind of dopamine lift before becomes much less satisfying. We need more of it. And so it becomes a kind of addictive cycle. But I didn't know about the stress activation, and it kind of makes a lot of sense as to why it's so difficult for us to disengage with kind of addictive activities. So why it was so difficult for our boys to come off computer games when we wanted them just to come and have a family supper or something, and why it's so difficult for us to stop scrolling. I mean, even me knowing all this, I still have to have a ClearSpace app on my phone that makes me do press ups if I want to go on Instagram or LinkedIn or something like that, because I'm still susceptible to it, even though I'm really quite old now.
Yeah, so that makes total sense, right? We've all had that experience of being stuck on our phones scrolling with those dopamine hits keeping us there. But then afterwards, we just feel kind of tired and cranky. We don't feel better. So what do you recommend that young people replace that with to actually get to the true happiness and the true flourishing?
Yeah, I think do something worthwhile with your friends. Or just be with your friends in person. But really, when you help others, that is so powerful. So if you can do that, and then just look after your body and your brain. So really thinking about what you're eating, because what you're eating is literally sending signals to your body and brain of how you're going to feel, how you're going to build new kind of muscles for young people. massively affects how the brain chemicals that are being released. So what you eat actually really, really matters. Drinking enough water, getting to bed on time, with a regular bedtime. So looking after your body as well. And exercise is so important. And like in the UK, it's so upsetting because the National Health Service minimum guidelines are an hour a day of exercise for all young people. And that needs to be some of it needs to be quite intense. And yet a lot of children in state schools, they only get about half an hour of sport a week. And it kind of breaks my heart because it's so basic. It's just, please let them move, help them move, encourage them to move. It would make all the difference in the world. So yeah, looking after your bodies as well makes a big difference to the extent to which you're able to flourish.
Fantastic. Well, our time has absolutely flown by today. We're going to put all the links for how to get in touch with Katy, how to support global social leaders, how to get the book, Leadership for Flourishing, and how to get her other books as well. Below in the description of the video, or if you're seeing this on another platform, below in comments. Katy, before we let you go, you mentioned to me this phrase and opportunity that I absolutely fell in love with last time, and I want to make sure everybody gets to hear about it, being a global social leader hero. What's that all about?
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, if you would like your day brightened, probably your month brightened, then please do volunteer to be a global social leader hero. And what you do is you give feedback to our young people on their social action projects during, and then you can help give feedback at the very end as well after the year. And we do encourage them to build on projects year on year. So it's not just a year thing, but when you give feedback, for me, it's just the biggest lift because it just makes me so happy to see what these young people are contributing to their communities and how much they're enjoying it. They shoot little videos as well, so you can actually get to know them a tiny bit through that, because obviously they're all over the world. We can't bring them together, but please connect with me on LinkedIn and I'll give you the information for how to sign up to be a global social leader hero. We'd love that. Thank you so much, Brandyn.
Yeah, amazing. And do people have to be in the UK to do that, or they can do that from anywhere?
Anywhere. It's all remote, so literally anywhere at all.
Yep. So, and is there any particular background that people need or any? No. Okay. No. So that's another easy thing that you can do to flourish and thrive is sign up for Global Social Leader Heroes, and you can do it from the comfort of your own home remotely, helping young people. Amazing, Katy. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time and your work on this amazing book that I'm going to show folks one last time. Really extraordinary compilation of 34 different experts and their wisdom from practice and from research. So thanks again, Katy, and we look forward to seeing you more very soon.
A huge thank you to you, Brandyn. What a joy. Thank you so much.
You bet.